Well, first off, I'm sympathetic to what Trump has gone through in this particular trial because I think it was not proper due process for him. I would say the same thing if it was Biden or anyone else in that process. So I want to be clear on that.
Would you mind telling us, tell us why you think he didn't get due process? I mean, the proceedings, we had reporters in there. I was there for a lot of it. There was a judge and he adjudicated a lot of these questions. Why do you think he wasn't given a fair process?
In today's video, Abby Phillip completely takes down Dr. Phil on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. Because when Dr. Phil starts treating every legal case as if it is driven by politics, he ignores how the justice system actually works. And Abby makes that point painfully clear. Claims of selective prosecution are not proven by feelings or opinions. They are proven by real evidence. And at this moment, the facts show that the people facing charges are being charged because of what they did, not because they are famous or politically connected. So let's break it all down and watch how Abby Phillip firmly shuts down Dr. Phil on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
And joining me now, Dr. Phil, whose interview with the former president just aired. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. You're clearly sympathetic to Trump, but you believe that he should drop this talk of revenge. Did he commit to not pursuing that if he was elected president?
Well, first off, I'm sympathetic to what Trump has gone through in this particular trial because I think it was not proper due process for him. I would say the same thing if it was Biden or anyone else in that process. So I want to be clear on that.
Would you mind telling us, tell us why you think he didn't get due process? I mean, the proceedings, we had reporters in there. I was there for a lot of it. There was a judge and he adjudicated a lot of these questions. Why do you think he wasn't given a fair process?
Well, I think it's a number of things. I think from a jury standpoint, and again, let me be clear, I'm not a lawyer. I look at it in terms of what the jury was given to solve this puzzle. And I think they heard some things that were very prejudicial that had nothing to do with solving the problem of the case at hand. I think there are some things that are considered black letter law or hornbook law that's just really not something that is controversial at all that was violated. I think you don't have someone that is considered to be an accomplice in a crime that has pled out or made a non-prosecution agreement and allow that information into the jury's awareness because it's very prejudicial and is not really probative of anything that they're asked to be problem solving or consider.
Who are you referring to there?
Michael Cohen.
Yeah. Dr. Phil, I don't want to get too deep into the law here, but it is not uncommon at all for people who are accomplices to crimes, people who have taken plea deals, non-prosecute. That is not uncommon at all for those people to then testify in subsequent trials for their alleged co-conspirators. That's kind of how a lot of these prosecutions work.
Well, really, give me examples of where that has been considered appropriate.
Look, prosecutors are prosecuting organized crime all the time, and in a lot of those cases, they are relying on co-conspirators to put people who are at the higher levels of the organization behind bars. I don't understand how you can say that because someone signed was not prosecuted, signed a non-prosecution agreement, that information or their testimony cannot be presented before the jury if they were a part of the alleged scheme.
Well, you'll have to give me an example to respond to because I just simply don't agree with that. I think it's not typical for juries to do this. I've spent most of my career.
It happens in mob cases all the time. I don't understand. Look, Dr. Phil, I don't understand why you would think that Michael Cohen, who is a key person in a lot of the narrative here, should not have been allowed to testify in this case. Is that what you're saying?
What makes Dr. Phil's argument even more confusing is that Trump's own Justice Department relied heavily on cooperating witnesses as well, because Trump's prosecutors used them all the time in MS-13 cases, drug cartel cases, corruption cases, and terrorism investigations. And no one on the right complained back then because they understood that this is how the system works. Cohen's testimony was not just dropped into the trial without support, it was backed by receipts, call records, emails, and checks, which is the whole purpose of a cooperating witness, since their testimony must be confirmed by other evidence. And in this case, it clearly was. Dr. Phil never deals with that reality, because the moment you admit it, his entire argument collapses. As for the claim that Trump did not receive due process, that simply does not line up with the facts, because Trump had every legal protection available. His lawyers filed motions, raised objections, cross-examined witnesses, and even had the chance to put him on the stand, which he chose not to do, and that was his right. But it is not proof of a broken justice system. What is really happening here is very simple. Dr. Phil is calling the process unfair, not because any laws were violated, but because the result was not what he wanted. And that is not a legal argument. It is political messaging disguised as legal analysis. Abby is absolutely right to challenge this, because once we start acting like a valid criminal trial becomes invalid just because a former president does not like it, we are no longer debating the law. We are actively weakening the justice system itself.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I said what I said. I think the fact that he made an agreement to say that he is guilty of the crime that the defendant is being tried for prejudices the jury that, hey, here's someone that's supposedly an accomplice that has said, I'm guilty of this. That prejudices a jury about the person that's currently on trial for the same crime.
I have some quibbles with what you're describing as the same crime. Michael Cohen was not charged with falsifying business records. That he actually did not was not prosecuted for that crime. But I do want to move on, because on this issue of what Trump is going to do if he is elected, did you get any clarity from him about whether he would try to pursue the people perhaps who pursued him, DAs or his political enemies?
Well, certainly that's a big issue. And I lean very strongly into the position of saying, look, this is not going to help this country. If you get into a position of power and your agenda is one of revenge, retribution, saying, okay, you came after me, so now I'm going to come after you, America picks up the tab for that. That's not anything that's good to do. That's going to take up time. That's just playing tit for tat. So you go after them because they came after you, then they come after you because they go after them. In the meantime, what about America? What about the business of America? What about the issues of education? What about the issues of the border? What about the issues of inflation? What about the issues of healthcare? What about all the things that the people really care about? They're not interested in you playing gotcha with the people that you think got you. We're not interested in that. Nobody's interested in that. And
how did you respond to that when that's your perspective. What do you sense is his inclination? Because just today, he said, for example, that he would indict the January 6th committee members, presumptively the members of Congress who were on that committee investigating what happened on January 6th. Are you more or less convinced after sitting down with him that he actually would follow through on those kinds of pledges?
Well, I actually don't think he will. I think this is a situation that, it's a process. This is something that I think he's had in his mind, that there's only one way to go, and that's to get even. And I think I've really made some headway with him that is not the way to go. I think it's a process. I think he'll turn this over and over in his mind, and I don't think he will do that. And to the extent that I have any opportunity to lean into this with him, I am going to relentlessly try and get him to not do that and to get others to not do that.
Dr. Phil's position also ignores something basic and important, which is that Trump had every legal advantage that money and power can provide, because his team challenged evidence, filed motions, cross-examined witnesses, and even secured delays. And he chose not to testify or present a defense, which is not a denial of due process, but a calculated strategy he has used for decades. Where Abby is especially accurate is when the discussion turns to Trump openly promising to prosecute his political opponents, because this is where the situation becomes serious. Historically, the United States has always maintained a clear separation between political power and criminal prosecution, and even during highly charged moments like Watergate, Iran-Contra, or the Clinton impeachment, no American president openly threatened to jail members of Congress or former officials simply for investigating him. That kind of language is not just reckless, it mirrors the tactics used by leaders in countries where democracy is breaking down, like Erdogan in Turkey, Orban in Hungary, and leaders in Venezuela and Russia who use criminal law as a weapon for political revenge. Once a president treats prosecution as just another political tool, the justice system stops being neutral and turns into an instrument of whoever is in power. That is why Abby's questions matter so much, because Dr. Phil is assuming Trump would not actually follow through, even though Trump has been saying this publicly for years. And history shows that when it benefits him politically, he usually does act on it, including when he pressured the Justice Department to investigate Hillary Clinton.
Look, we need to stop this. This is a time where America needs to come together, not be playing gotcha and going on some kind of revenge tour. We don't need that. We don't have time for that. It's not good for America. We need to unify, not be going after people that we think came after us, whether we think they did so fairly or otherwise.
Yeah, it sounds like
we don't need that. The last thing we need is for Trump to be going after people that he thinks have treated him unfairly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you are personally taking it upon yourself to talk through this with him. But for the voters who are evaluating this very issue, Donald Trump is explicitly saying, I'm going to prosecute my predecessor, Joe Biden, if I'm elected. He's explicitly saying he wants to go after his political enemies. He will go after the members of Congress who were doing their jobs, investigating what happened on January 6th. Don't voters need to weigh that, especially since the argument that Trump is making with no evidence is that Biden is going after him?
Well, I think they absolutely have to weigh that. And if they think that Donald Trump or any other candidate is going to do that, then, and they think that is not what I'm putting somebody in office for, then they absolutely shouldn't vote for them. I don't think that's what we're putting people in office to do. That's running their agenda instead of America's agenda. And we need people to run America's agenda. Look, we've got serious problems, and it takes serious people to deal with those problems. I'm not a political animal. It doesn't matter to me whether somebody's Democrat or Republican. I could care less, don't know enough about politics to talk about it intelligently. But I can tell you this, from a cultural standpoint, we need people working on the problems that are impacting the quality of life in America, impacting the quality of medical care, impacting the quality of education, impacting the quality of people's ability to feed and take care of their families. And that doesn't leave room to be playing gotcha and retribution and revenge. That's not what we need. We need people to get in there and do their jobs. And if not, they shouldn't have the privilege. That's not a legacy, it's a privilege. And we shouldn't be putting people in office that want to play those kind of games.
Dr. Phil often says he wants serious people to focus on education, healthcare, and overall quality of life. But the reality is that you cannot have a functioning government that deals with those issues if a president spends his time punishing investigators, targeting political critics, and turning every disagreement into criminal retaliation. History makes this very clear because authoritarian cycles never end with better hospitals or stronger schools. They end with corruption, instability, and a weakened civil service where qualified professionals refuse to serve because they fear becoming targets. When Dr. Phil suggests that he is not being political, it overlooks an important point because political neutrality does not mean ignoring facts. Every independent legal organization that has examined Trump's cases, including the ACLU, the Federal Bar Association, and multiple former Republican Justice Department officials, has reached the same conclusion, which is that prosecutions are legitimate when the evidence supports them. And that is the system working exactly as it was designed to work. Choosing to prosecute or protect someone based on who they are is political manipulation. That is why Americans should take Trump's promises seriously, because the risk is not only what he might do to Joe Biden or members of Congress, but what that kind of presidency would mean for every future administration. If we normalize political prosecution as a campaign pledge, the line between democracy and strongman rule disappears. Unity is not built by pretending these threats do not exist. It is built by defending the rule of law. So every American, whether they support Trump, oppose him, or feel indifferent, should understand that the justice system belongs to the country, not to any single individual.